right, fire it up. Let's do your thing here, bud. Nobody's any better at this than you are.
That's fine. Take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. Good luck to you.
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here. Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Record. Hell yeah.
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4. Great job, guys.
How about this? Paul, you got sound now? I think you probably do. I'm seeing it being metered. So thanks for letting me know. Either way, thanks for joining in to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. Glad Paul was here to catch that, because I would have been not happy to have to do this again tomorrow. But either way, thanks for joining in. Sorry I'm a little late this evening. It's been a long day. Had a couple of baseball games with my son earlier today, and then catching up on qualifying, and then the truck race, and digging into all of the practice information and qualifying information and all the data, and kind of inputting it and kind of seeing where we're at. Once we get into it, I've not started any of my lineups, so I can kind of give you an estimate of where I'm probably going to be lying on most of these drivers, but I do not have any of my lineups done at this point, so just bear with me on that one. Kind of a crazy day with late qualifying and then truck race following it, and trying to get lineups in baseball and all that. But either way, we are headed to Kansas, but before we do, let's go back and take a look at Dover from last week, where everybody's favorite driver won the race, because he beat everybody else's favorite driver. Denny Hamlin gets the win at Dover, and yeah, he beat my favorite driver by just a few car lengths. But let's take a look at the optimal lineups from Dover. It was pretty much kind of what I kind of expected it to be. I wasn't quite expecting it to be... I knew it was going to be top heavy and bottom heavy. I wasn't quite expecting this as the optimal lineup, though. I mean, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr. finishing 1, 2, 3, and leading the bulk of most of the laps. Denny Hamlin really being the only true dominator of the race, leading 136 laps of the 400. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty much just, I just didn't think Daniel Hemrick would be able to actually finish in the top 10, much less starting 14th. So that one definitely kind of caught me off guard. I knew Justin Haley starting 36, dead last in the field, would end up probably having a decent day. I mean, I thought Christopher Bell was going to be kind of a shoe-in, but as we have found, not always the shoe-in is the right play, and he ended up wrecking early in the race. We kind of have a similar setup for this weekend, and we'll see how that plays out. But Corey LaJoie starting 25th, making it only to 21st. I mean, not much of a place differential. I mean, 4 spots of difference, but when it's 5,600, 5,400, and 5,200, and you're allowed, and you take the top 3 most expensive guys on the board, I guess that's kind of what we get. I mean, we're going to see a little bit similar scenario for tomorrow's race. But Chase Elliott was another one who had a really good day. I mean, he had 70 points. I mean, you could easily have swapped out Chase Elliott for Martin Truex Jr. and still done really, really well. In fact, I don't think I saw anybody with this full optimal lineup in any of the contests that I was running. A lot of them had a couple of similarities. They were always just kind of 1 or 2 off. But either way, I mean, Kyle Busch starting in first, finishing fourth. It was a really good race for him. Ryan Blaney, a strong track anyways, but started second, finished in seventh. It just kind of goes to show I should have followed my thought and reasoning, and one of the two would probably finish in the top 15 in points, and they both did. But our optimal lineup challenge after 11 races, still pretty much anybody's contest here. Ross Chastain, Noah Gragson, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex Jr., all still with 4 optimal lineups. Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Kyle Larson with 3, and a whole host of people with 2 and a few with 1. So either way, ended up being a pretty good race. I enjoyed watching it. Even though I don't mind Denny Hamlin, he's not my favorite driver, but he beat my favorite driver. Either way, that's kind of what happened last week. Let's take a look. So I keep kind of adding into this. So this was last week's practice, and I think if everybody's been watching, I've kind of told you I would try to give you as much information as I have, and kind of where practice laps, 10 laps, fall offs, qualifying, and all that kind of plays into potentially where they end up finishing, and seeing if there's a trend. So this is kind of the first real week where I've kind of got some more information, and I've got Draftkings placement, their actual finish in the race, where they started and where they practiced, and we can kind of hopefully maybe see a trend. Noah Gragson had the least amount of fall off on a 10-lap run. Now, the fall off became much more extreme than this. I mean, they were running low 24 to mid 24 second lap speeds on much longer runs. But this kind of gave us an indication that even though Noah Gragson was 34th in practice, he was able to back that up with a 5th place starting spot and finish in 6th, and was able to kind of stay around the top 10 most of the day. So there's kind of maybe some indication there. Now he could tell. I mean, he didn't have any real dominator points, so he ended up finishing in 6th, but was 12th on the DraftKings point total. Martin Truex Jr. started in 15th, had very little fall off and finished 3rd. Corey Heim, which being new to the car, probably meant in practice he was probably taking it fairly easy, getting adjusted to the car and learning. Andrew B, think we will see drivers be able to move up through the field like the truck race? I think what we saw in the truck race tonight will not be the same as what we are going to see in the Cup race. The tire's different. And we had a lot of people qualify way better than they should have in the truck race. Like Chase Purdy. He's a decent driver, and I think he ended up with a decent finish. I have not broken down any of the stats from the truck race because I was busy getting this video ready. But a lot of the guys that started in the top 10 didn't finish in the top 10. You had Ty Majeski, who was fast in practice, fast in qualifying, have issues on lap 2. And that's potentially to be expected, but it was pretty easy to see from practice to qualifying and their past track history that a lot of the guys in the top 10 should not have been there. And it was very apparent. Also, the trucks have a ton more downforce, so they can run anywhere on that track and still make pretty good lap times. Where this Cup car, with the gearing the way it is, if they don't run the top groove or one groove down, um, they're going to be slower. Even on a long tire run, it's so top groove dominant that it's going to be hard. Even if it rubbers in, it's not, the bottom groove's not going to have a whole lot of speed. So it's going to be extremely hard to pass. And then we're going to run into the same thing that everybody's been complaining about all week, is being able to Aero Block, which means the car in the front dirties up the air for the car that's trying to come up and make a pass. And we're going to see that even more so at Kansas. And it's not just with this car. This has been going on since racing started. Whoever's out front gets the cleaner air. The only place you don't see this is at a super speedway, because you want to pull the draft. But if you're one or two cars and you don't have somebody behind helping push, it's very hard to get out of the wake of the car that's in front. And this next gen era car really dirties the air behind them. But in 2019, I remember Kevin Harvick had a much faster car than Joey Logano, and Kevin Harvick for 20 laps could not get around Joey Logano, and that was in the Gen 6 car, the model type before this next gen car. So aero blocking and aero issues are gonna be something to watch, which means place differential, not place differential, but running position and pit stops are going to be real keys. Now, this new next gen car definitely has, I think your fall off chart will be a big help for more. Yeah. And we'll get to that in 1 second. I just kind of wanted to, let's look at last week, and then we'll kind of get more into this week, because I do have some data to kind of look at and kind of go over. Yeah, I mean, the only one that, kind of caught me off guard was the Christopher Bell not having a good race, but he hadn't had a good race for 4 races. And then today he goes out and gets the pole for today's race. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know what to expect. But there seems to be a pretty good indication in here. I mean, Corey Haim we can throw out because it was his first Cup race. Carson Hocevar kind of does what Carson Hocevar does. He started in 20th. I said he was going to probably finish where he started, and that's about where he did. Well, that ended up being 25 Draftkings points. Ty Gibbs moving from 19th to 8th. So I think there is some information here to kind of look at. If we take the Corey Haim out, Corey LaJoie is not bad. He finished top 15 in points, and that's something I kind of striving for, is trying to find the 15 guys that I think are going to finish up there. Kind of throw the Carson Hocevar one out. Christopher Bell wrecked. So there's some information in here, and this is really indicative, is the guys with the most amount of fall off really did not perform well. I mean, Jimmy Johnson falling off, started in 27th, finished 28th. Chase Briscoe 7th to 29th. And Chase Briscoe had some issues, but tire fall off definitely was an issue for the Fords and Chase Briscoe. AJ Allmendinger, like I said, I think he was just starting too far up. Even though he did finish in 13th, he was 18th in Draftkings points. So this is the first real look at, or looking back at what practice was, what the fall off for 10 laps were, and where it came in. So one race does not give us a big sample size. We'll have to see what this race tomorrow brings, and kind of see if there's some similarities. And there might not be. And I might be just throwing darts, but I think we're going to start to see that some of these guys are going to have really good days, and most of these guys are going to probably have bad days. So either way, let's head to Kansas for the Advent Health 400. It is a intermediate style track, or a cookie cutter, 1.5 mile, D-shaped, tri-oval, whatever you want to call it. They race on like 5 of these tracks. But but the track length is 1.5 miles in length, 17 to 20 degrees of progressive banking in the corners. We have a race length of 267 laps, Dominator points of 186.9. So Dominator, we need to, definitely target at least one, maybe a second, because there has been a tendency to kind of split the Dominator points, especially with this next gen car. All it takes is Denny Hamlin to lead a bunch of laps, and then Kyle Larson has a better pit stop and leads a bunch of laps, and then they share first and second. Kind of what happened last week. So I think we're still going to be targeting 1 to 2 Dominators. We're looking for another person to finish in the top 5, and then from there we're looking for place differential. Other tracks to compare to, we've got Kansas, Charlotte, Las Vegas, Miami. You can also throw Texas into there, even though because it's got 2 completely different corners, or sets of corners, kind of throws things a little askew. I mean, in Miami, it's a true oval compared to these D-shaped cookie cutters. So these are other tracks that you can compare to. Las Vegas and Charlotte have much higher tire wear. So does Miami. Kansas is one of the ones that doesn't because they run such top-line dominant tracks. All right, so our optimal lineups from the 2 races from last year here at Kansas. I mean, as we see, it was 1 Dominator, almost a second Dominator with Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin kind of falling in there, but Denny Hamlin also fell into the place differential category. And, it definitely had 2 value picks. So I think this is going to be kind of what we've seen in most of the races so far this year. This is going to be kind of a straightforward race. It's going to be very similar to Vegas. Looking for those 2 high-end guys, 2 kind of middle-of-the-road guys, and 1 or 2 of the lower-end guys. So we're going to have to just kind of piecemeal this thing together. I don't think we're going to see somebody that's going to go out and lead 240 of the 267 laps. We're going to have some guys that are going to have really good performance on pit roads, guys that aren't. Tire wear will kind of play a little bit of a factor. The spring race, I mean, pretty much very similar. 1 Dominator. We had 4 place differentials. I mean, we had Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Justin Haley, AJ Allmendinger, and Bubba Wallace. I mean, Bubba Wallace, and once again, we are back into repeat mode. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's Hendrick and it's Joe Gibbs. This week you can kind of throw 2311 into that mix. And the Fords are going to have decent speed for 10 to 20 laps, and they're going to fall off. Now the question is, I'm really interested to see what Noah Gragson does this week. If he can pull another top 10 out, he potentially is going to be somebody we really need to start paying a lot more attention to. And this week is also another really good potential week for Ty Gibbs coming out of the Joe Gibbs camp. The 2022 race, first year of the next gen, kind of threw things a little bit loopy, but we're definitely kind of seeing the same type of pattern. 1 true Dominator, 2 place differentials, 2 values, and 4 guys finishing in the top 5. I mean, once again, wash, rinse, repeat. 1 Dominator, 2 place differentials, 3 value picks, and 4 finishers at the spring Kansas race. I mean, the racing ends up being really, really good, but as far as Draftkings, it's just finding those 2 drivers up top who are going to dominate, lead a lot of laps, 2 drivers that are going to be in the middle of the pack, they're going to end up finishing really well, and 2 cheap guys that are going to have good place differential days. And this kind of an indication of what we see. I mean, if we're looking at our averages for our top 15 Draftkings, 3.4 of them come from the top 5, 2.4 come from 6th through 10th, which really shows the top end speed guys have top end speed, and they kind of hold their spots. 6 through 10, not quite so as much, but now we get into some place differential in the middle pack guys, 3.8, and 21st through 30th, we average 4 of the 15 are coming from there. And 31st or worst, it's only 1.4. The front row, typically somebody from the front row ends up in the top 15 in points, mostly because of that Dominator. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So if we're looking at the the qualifying spots, starting in the top 5. I mean, it's Kyle Larson. No, this is last week's. Last week? No, this is this week's. Yeah, Christopher Bell starting from the pole. And I don't know what about Christopher Bell. Honestly, he scares me because he's had 4 really bad weeks. He kind of got the Austin Dillon bug. And Austin Dillon, I think, has the bug again. He got the horseshoe stuck in the wrong spot. But starting in that front row or front top 5, I think Kyle Larson's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Starting from the front row, Ross Chastain had some really good speed, and he's really good at these top line groove tracks. So we're going to see the same thing this week as we do next week at Darlington. Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson are going to have really good days. It'll be interesting to see what. Like I said, I'm really curious to see what Noah does. 3rd place starting spot. He's been starting really well, and he's actually been finishing well. 6 through 10. I mean, Ty Gibbs is somebody to watch. Chase Elliott's always good here. And then we got some Fords that I'm not really that concerned with. I think they fall out of the top 10, so I'm not real concerned with those guys. 11 through 20 gets real interesting, and we've got Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Tyler Reddick. All 3 of these guys definitely have potentials of winning the race, which also gives them potentially a little bit of place differential and those types of things. We start getting into the 20s, and we've got Bubba Wallace, who I don't mind. I don't think I like Ryan Blaney. He's not strong here at this track, and once we get to each of the driver pages, kind of show a little bit more. Yeah, and 31 through 38, I've got Christopher Bell down here, so I knew something was off. Christopher Bell should not be there. He's not starting 33rd. All right, so our practice. Let's get into practices. And these times were even closer than what we've seen at some of these other tracks. This next-gen car is just... the parity is unbelievable, which really kind of plays into who's got really good pit crews, and who's got really smart crew chiefs. Kyle Larson is fast. 9th in single lap, 25 laps, 2nd in 10 lap consecutive average. His fall off from practice to 10 lap was only 0.12, so not a ton of fall off in 10 laps. Yeah, that's right. Chase Elliott, same thing. I mean, we're just not seeing a ton of fall off on these long runs. And when I looked at the guys that ran 25 and 30 laps, the most I saw was about a half a second of fall off. So not a ton there. Let's get down. This is the kind of the chart I kind of want to look at. I mean, we see Ty Gibbs had a practice ranking of 20th on single lap speed. He only fell off a tenth, just a little over a tenth in time. Kyle Larson, same thing. Only fell off 0.12. Martin Truex Jr. 0.14. So that's why I think the Ty Gibbs play could be something to kind of keep an eye on this week. I'm definitely not saying we need to pull him out of our lineups. I kind of think, and this kind of track kind of plays into his right into his wheelhouse a little bit. The Jimmy Johnson, he was 38th in practice. He had a 30.871. He was 6/10, almost, 6/10 or more off of the faster guys. Which, okay, so you're not driving the car as hard. Your tires aren't going to wear as bad. But when you look at his 10-lap average, he's at a 31.0, where Kyle Larson's at a 30.3. I mean, 7/10 of a second per lap. That's a huge difference. Now, can Jimmy Johnson... I don't like his starting spot in 19th, so I'm not sure I like the Jimmy Johnson play as much. That, and he's still just struggling with getting used to this car. So... out of this list so far, I like the Ty Gibbs, I like the Kyle Larson, I like the Martin Truex Jr. I think Chris Buescher may be starting a little too far up. But I know the Brad K play starting in 30th with a practice rank of 18th is an interesting play. So I think the Brad K play is potentially there. I think potentially the Ryan Preece is there, even though once again he fell off to a 31.019. Brad K was a 30.5. I mean, a half second faster than Ryan Preece. So I like the Brad K play more than I like the Ryan Preece. Joey Logano, I think he's just starting a little too far up. And then the guys that were really slow were pretty slow. I mean, Harrison Burton fell off 8 tenths from a 30.5 to a 31.3. Derek Kraus, I mean, these guys are starting 31st and 38th. I mean, honestly, I think they end up being multiple laps down by the time this thing's said and done. Ryan Blaney, when we get to Ryan Blaney, we will see his stats here at Kansas are not good. So this is not surprising that his fall off was here and that his speed really was not in the top 20 for most of practice. The Tyler Reddick fall off kind of surprised me a little bit and almost wondered. I think he did touch the wall, and I wonder if that happened inside this 10-lap run that he had. And it's a little hard to kind of figure out where that happened, but Tyler Reddick's going to be fast. So out of the three down here, Harrison Burton, Derek Kraus, and Ryan Blaney are probably the ones that I'm probably going to stay away from. I probably would have stayed away from anyway. All right, let's look at the driver-by-driver breakdown. That's kind of really what we need to dig into anyways, but I like to give all the practice information that I've got, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to dig real deep into practice because it literally happened. We went into it. I had to eat dinner. I ate dinner, went into the truck race, and during the truck race, I was trying to break it down. So I had like an hour and a half to break it down and get put into this sheet. So hopefully we'll get more time next week. I plan on going actually to the Cup race at Darlington. I've never been to Darlington, and I've got to go help my dad with some things down in South Carolina. So I was like, oh, I'll just go on Sunday and go check out the race. Denny Hamlin, 11,300, starting in 14th. Okay. I like Denny Hamlin's starting spot when it comes to Draftkings. He has got 3 wins on the season. He is riding high. And if you listened to his podcast earlier, he thinks he's going to have another chance at another win. And I mean, his practice speeds were good. 5th in single lap, 4th in 10-lap consecutive average. So he was definitely able to hold his practice speeds. And I mean, you look at this, the last 5 races that I'm looking at. So, and that even, I mean, I've got the Vegas race because it's such a similar style track. And I didn't want to put the 2021 because that was the Gen 6 era. So I put the Vegas race in here as kind of a way to look at the last 5 races. He's 5 for 5. 5 top 5s in these 5 races with 1 win. A 2.8 average finish. And he finished 2nd in this fall race here at Kansas last year. He's really good at Kansas. 4 wins total at Kansas, 13 out of 31 top 5s, 26 out of 31 top 20s with a 12th place average finish. I definitely like Denny Hamlin starting in 14th. Kyle Larson here at $11,000, starting 4th. His practice speeds were decent for the second practice. Oh yeah, practice was a little bit strange because, I mean, you had truck qualifying, ARCA race, which has a different tire compound on it, and literally an hour and a half later, they went straight into practice and qualifying. So the first practice actually was kind of wearing off the rubber from the ARCA race, which is a different tire compound and a different tire manufacturer. Even though the track was really nice and rubbered in, the different compounds don't always mix as well. So once that came off, and that hurt the first guys, the first group in practice. So the second group ended up having a little bit better speed and a little bit more better advantage on seeing what the car was actually going to do once it got into race trim. So I know we can't find a consistency of every racetrack, same thing. I don't know. but you just have to kind of realize what you're looking at and how you're looking at it with these practice speeds and qualifying speeds, because it changes week to week, track type to track type, tire type to tire type, and then what are the conditions of the track when they hit the track, you know. But either way, I mean, Kyle Larson's stats at these 5 races are pretty much as good as Denny's. 1 win, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, a 3.4 average finish. He finished 4th in this fall race here at Kansas last year, an 11.5 average finish over 19 races. I mean, it's a coin flip. Denny Hamlin's going to have some place differential. Kyle Larson's got more of potential of having dominant speed and being able to lead laps early. So that being said, can you fit them both in and get the correct lineups? I mean, I would assume so, but that's kind of the two that I'm really kind of looking at for potential dominance here. But we've got a lot of guys that are really good here. But Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin kind of seem to be the cream has risen to the top. And there was somebody who was really fast in practice who a huge place differential, and everybody will be having it. Tyler Reddick next in line here, starting in 15th, 82. That price tag is not right for Tyler Reddick. So excuse that one, but he is starting 15th. His practice speeds were really good. He was first in single lap, third in 10 lap consecutive average, even though his speed fell off quite a bit. He was still able to maintain third. So that tells you how fast his single lap speed was. He does have a win here, and it was the fall race last year. So he's the last one to win here at Kansas. And it's a little askew here because Tyler Reddick, this last year was kind of the first year he was really embedded with 2311. And when he was with Richard Childress, the speeds weren't quite as fast. So there's a little bit of a skew here. But I don't mind Tyler Reddick starting in 15th. His practice speeds were good. His fall-off was scared me a little bit, but like I said, I think that's when he kind of touched the wall. He does like to run as close to the wall as he possibly can, and sometimes that can give you a little bit of scrape. As you can ask William Byron. 10,500, he was second in single lap, first in 10 lap consecutive average. I think he was first in 15, 20, 25 lap consecutive average. He was very, very quick in practice and then went out and qualified and rubbed the wall and had a really bad qualifying. Don't think he's going to have to go to a backup. I don't think any of the repairs that are going to be needed are going to send him to the rear. Even if it does, he's already starting back there anyways. But you know, the one thing I would not want to see is them have to replace the car with a backup car. I don't think that's going to be the case. It only looked like it really just scuffed some of the paint up. But William Byron should be extremely fast, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him come through the muck. That's the problem. He's got to come through all of the muck. And that's where William has got himself in trouble the last couple of weeks, is he'll end up with a bad pit stop or something will happen on track, and he's stuck kind of back middle of the field, and out of his control, something happens, and he ends up with a wrecked race car. So buyer beware here. Starting in 36, being the fastest guy in practice looks really good, just like Christopher Bell looked really good for last week. There is a potential that he ends up having a bad pit stop, blows a tire, ends up with somebody else's mess. But I mean, that's the case for anybody. But, you know, he's going to be heavily owned also. So there are lots of buyer beware signals going on here with William Byron. I'm still going to have a ton of him. I'm probably going to have 40, 45, 50% ownership. He's probably going to be somewhere between 45 and 50, probably 50% owned. So if he has a bad race, a lot of other people are going to have a bad race with him and with you. So it's one of those, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situations. And if you don't happen to have him, that's why I say don't run him in every lineup. If you don't happen to have him and he has a bad day, you're going to look like a hero. But if you don't have him and he has a good day, you're going to look pretty bad. Martin Truex Jr. here, 10,300, starting in 13th. He's only got one top 10, or only one top 5 in the 5 races we're looking at, which are mostly the Kansas races. A 12.4 average finish, not bad. He was 16th in single lap, 5th in 10 lap consecutive average. But, I mean, he finished 36th in this race in the fall last year. Now, he went on a really bad slide as soon as the playoffs started last year. And this was one of the combination of tracks that he just performed really bad at in the playoffs. So, I mean, there is good potential here. I don't mind the Martin Truex Jr. play. I'll probably have him in 20-25% of my lineups. He comes in ranked 4th on my usage chart, or my ranking chart. So, I don't mind. I think it's a pretty. This is a good cash play. If you're a cash player, Martin Truex Jr. is a good, safe, solid, probably going to put in your lineup. Other than he's expensive, he's 10,300, and when you've got a Denny Hamlin, a Kyle Larson, and potentially a William Byron that's going to come from the rear, I'm not sure Martin Truex Jr. fits real well. But it could be very contrarian to play a Martin Truex Jr. instead of a Denny Hamlin or Kyle Larson. That's where I would substitute him in, or something along those lines. So, Christopher Bell starting from the pole. And he's gotten the pole here, I think 3 out of the 4 races in this next gen era. So he's really, really fast on qualifying. But he finishes okay. I mean, he's got 12th place average finish over the 5 races we're looking at. His practice speeds were pretty good, 11th and 11th. And as my chart shows, one first or second ends up finishing pretty decent here. So is Christopher Bell gonna shake the monkey off his back? Maybe, but I mean, usually it takes an okay run for somebody to kind of start to shake that off. And I thought Austin Dillon was kind of doing that, and then it ended up not being it ended up being a false flag. But Christopher Bell, starting from the pole, scares me a little bit, to be perfectly honest. He's only got 2 top 5 finishes here in 8 races. He's got a 15.1 average finish at Kansas. So a little nervous with the starting spot for Christopher Bell and his bad luck. Chase Elliott, 9,800, starting in 9th. And his practice speeds were right there. 8th in single lap, 9th in 10 lap consecutive average. And his average finish is kind of right there at 11. 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s. He finished 6th in this race last year. Just a good. This is going to be that line drive type of a hit. I don't really expect Chase Elliott to be vying for a top 3 spot. Can he get a top 5? Maybe. Probably closer to where he's kind of been averaging. I mean, he's going to probably finish 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in there. Is that enough at 9,800? Does it fit with the other guys that we might need to take that are going to have bigger place differentials or dominant type of runs? And I'm not sure Chase Elliott has a dominant type of run. At least there was no indication in practice. I mean, his practice speeds were good. And I think he finishes in the top 10. I just don't think he gets in the top 5 or top 3. Bubba Wallace, 9,500, starting in 23rd. He was 3rd in single lap, 8th and 10 lap consecutive average. He just missed a little bit in qualifying. He does have 1 win here. It's one of his few wins that he does have. He is here at Kansas. But that day he won, he started either on the pole or outside pole. And his practice speeds, if I remember correctly, he was fastest in every category. I think he's got a good chance for a decent place differential day, and I don't mind playing Bubba for that. I'm not sure Bubba Wallace, he could potentially be a top 5, but I'm not sure he beats out a Reddick, a Larson, a Hamlin, or potentially if William Byron can get up there. I don't know if that ends up playing well, but I think if we're looking at Bubba Wallace as a 9th, 10th, 11th place finish, and at 9,500, Is that going to be where we need it? Maybe. But 2311 is very good at Kansas. I don't mind having some ownership in Bubba Wallace if it fits. I mean, once again, we're kind of running into the same thing we ran into last week. There's a lot of guys in this price range and higher that are all almost viable for this race. I mean, here's another one. Ty Gibbs, 9,300, starting in 6th. His single lap was 20th. His 10 lap was 6th. And as we remember, he had the least amount of fall off of anybody in practice. Does have a 27.3 average finish here. He did finish 14th last year in this race, in the fall race. Where do I think Ty Gibbs finishes? Honest guess, I think he finishes 11th. But I also don't mind taking some shots in the dark with Ty Gibbs. I will probably have about a 10 to 15% ownership with Ty Gibbs. He comes in ranked 12th on my ranking system. So I don't mind taking a few shots. I wouldn't go super heavy on Ty Gibbs. One of these races, I keep saying it, one of these races, he's going to just show up and he's going to get the win. Ross Chastain starting outside pole next to Christopher Bell. 9,100. 9th place average finish over the 5 races we're looking at. 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, 5 top 20s. Finished 13th in the race here last fall. He's pretty solid at these 1.5-mile tracks. Ross is another one kind of like Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson, who really like to run the high side of a track up close to the wall. He's really good at that. Starting second, I mean, once again, either Christopher Bell or Ross Chastain have the potential to having a very good day on the averages. Ross Chastain is due for a good finish. So I think if I'm looking at the 2 guys in the front row, I think I'm more interested in taking a Ross Chastain than I am a Christopher Bell. And that's more of just a gut check. There's really not a whole lot of differentiating factors when it comes to practice speeds for Ross compared to Christopher Bell. I think Ross was actually a little bit faster. It's just much more of a gut feeling that I think Ross ends up having a better day. Kyle Busch, who surprised me last week with his pole and then ended up finishing in the top 5, is starting in the top 5 again. But his practice speeds were pretty good. He was 6th in single lap, 7th in 10-lap consecutive average. Has the light bulb volume been turned on at RCR for Kyle Busch and this next-gen car? Maybe. Or maybe not. I think this is a risky play. I think I'm putting it kind of in the same realm as Ty Gibbs. There is potential for Kyle Busch to have a decent day. There's also just as much potential for Kyle Busch to not have a good day or finish in 12th. And if you're starting in 5th, finish in 12th, not lead any laps, and you cost 8,900, kind of stings. That hurts. But Kyle Busch practice speeds were good. Last week was good. NASCAR is a momentum style sport, so momentum is turned on a little bit better for Kyle Busch right now. Where it's not been very good for Christopher Bell. So I think you have some ownership. I think I'll have some ownership in Kyle Busch. Probably going to be about the same as Ty Gibbs. So if I can fit Ty Gibbs into, let's say I'm looking at 10 lineups, and I've got 3 lineups that have, or I have 4 lineups out of the 10 that would have Ty Gibbs in it. Maybe substitute 2 of those for Kyle Busch and 2 of those have Ty Gibbs. I think that's kind of how it ends up getting played. I don't think I would play both in a lineup, though. I think it's one or the other. Ryan Blaney, $9,600. Starting in 26th, 17th in single lap, 19th in 10-lap consecutive average. Practice speeds were okay. But we start to look at his average finishes. 17.2 average finish. Finished 12th in this race last year. Okay, I mean, all this looks fairly positive. Until we look at what the Fords have done recently, and they have not gotten much better. And if we look at Ryan Blaney's stats in practice, there was just nothing that makes me think he's going to get up into the top 10 and run into the top 10. And in fact, a lot of times when he gets kind of put back in the muck, as I like to call it, he really kind of struggles and gets frustrated with other drivers. And I could see this being a very troublesome day for Ryan Blaney tomorrow. So as much as starting 26 sounds really good, and I think that's probably going to potentially push people to having ownership in him, I potentially am probably going to fade off of Ryan Blaney comparatively. I'm probably going to run him a little bit more than I would a Ty Gibbs or who was I talking about? Kyle Busch. So probably like 15 to 17% ownership. So that's just kind of where I'm at. My pricing is all screwed up. What did I do to this spreadsheet? I had it all fixed, and now it's screwy. Yeah, so the pricing is absolutely all screwy. Kyle Busch 8,900, Ryan Blaney 8,600, Joey Logano 8,300. Over here. So Joey Logano 8,300. So Joey Logano's price is right. Ryan Blaney is not right. Ryan Blaney should be 8,600, not 90. Sorry about that. Joey Logano starting 11th, 32nd in single lap speed, 25th in 10 lap consecutive average. Whoa! Fell off the face of the earth in practice. Starting 11th. This is one of his better tracks for mile and a halves, but starting 11th when your practice speeds were that bad, yeah, I don't think I like this play much. One thing, what was his fall off? Practice, 10 lap fall off. Joey Logano, he was 9th on fall off, so not bad. So I mean, potentially he saves tire, but the problem is if he tries to save tires starting 11th, he's going to fall to 21st or 22nd before the tires kick in, and then is it possible to get those spots back? I don't know. Alex Bowman here next in line at $8,000, which is right. Starting in 18th, 21st in single lap, 18th in 10 lap consecutive average. Got an 8.5 average finish here. He actually runs pretty well at Kansas. Practice speeds were not great. Starting in 18th, there's definitely some potential for some place differential here. Let's see, what was his fall off? Not good. Not good when I can't even find him. Alex Bowman. Oh, he didn't even run a 10 lap consecutive average. Had him 10 lap. That's weird. Let me check that because that doesn't seem right. I think he may have been the only one that didn't have a 10 lap run. Well, let's see. Schedule. We'll pull this. We'll just look together. Lap averages. 10 lap. Alex Bowman did not have a 10 lap. But he actually gained speed on his 5 lap. So yeah, he didn't make a 10 lap run. Not sure why my chart did that. Either way. So yeah, he didn't even do a 10 lap run. He was 21st in single lap. And he's starting in 18th. I mean, we've got some place differential potential here, but having issues and trouble in practice kind of scare me. I know they were late getting out to practice. So I coin flip here with Alex Bowman. Probably a 10% to 15% ownership. Kind of probably where I'm going to fall with Alex Bowman. Don't love it, don't hate it. Not sure he gets a top 10, and we kind of need a top 10 at this price range starting in 18th. So, yeah, probably closer to 10% ownership. Brad Keselowski, I do not know what to think about Brad Keselowski in the year that he's having. They ran really well at Kansas. They ran okay at Texas. Two most similar tracks to this. Starting in 30th after practice speeds of 18th and 14th. I mean, I think there's a decent amount of upside or place differential upside with Brad K. And at 7,700, there's definitely a willingness to take a shot. But we look at Dover last week, and he was awful. Awful. And that's one of Brad Keselowski's better tracks that he runs. Honestly, I don't know what to make out of RFK Racing right now and Brad K. He still has not had a win with this next-gen era car. I don't remember the last time Brad K even won. It was back when he was with Penske. Starting in 30th, it's worth having some ownership in him because of the place differential. And he's 7,700. We're almost getting into the point where they're value picks. Comes in 9th on my ranking system. For the potential, sure. 15 to 20% ownership is probably the most I would go with Brad K. And I think he probably ends up probably just a little more than 20% ownership on the ranking, on the real actual ownership in tournaments. So, yeah, I don't mind the Brad K play because they had speed at 1.5 miles, especially at Vegas, which is probably the most similar track to Kansas. So I don't mind taking some shots. And Chris Buescher, his teammate, is starting in 12th and had decent practice speeds. I mean, kind of once we wrap it all up, puts him probably 15th, 16th. So starting 12th, a little bit further up than I want to see him. I would much rather take a shot on Brad Keselowski than a Chris Buescher. So I'm probably backed off 5 to 10% on the Chris Buescher. He was 22nd in single lap, 17th in 10 lap consecutive average. Got an average finish of 19.6. Yeah, so at 5 to 8% ownership really in Chris Buescher is probably what I'm looking at. Noah Gragson. Kind of the running, making the rest of the Ford drivers look kind of silly. He was 4th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap consecutive average. His fall off speed was not bad at all. Now his other starts here were with either when he was in the 16 car for Colleague or when he was with Legacy last year when they were driving the Chevys. And he's pretty good at tire saving. So I don't, starting in 3rd, I mean, I don't like it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't know what to do with Noah Gragson at this. I'm a Gragson fan. I really like Gragson. I loved him in the Xfinity series. I thought he had a lot of energy. It was a lot of fun to watch. And it's good to see him doing well. Starting 3rd though, just it makes me nervous. But I mean, he's made the optimal lineup 4 times out of 11 races. So I don't, yeah, it's a tough call with Noah. You know, if he were starting all these races in like 16th or 17th, and he was racing his way up to top 5 finishes, I'd be like, oh yeah, we need to definitely take Noah Gragson. But because he's starting in 3rd and finishing in 4th or 5th, he ends up with a really good points day in Draftkings, and it flies under the radar. So, I mean, yeah, definitely throw some darts with Noah, but definitely am not gonna go real heavy on Noah. Daniel Suarez, starting in 27th at $7,200. His practice speed was 19th and 23rd, and not bad. He's pretty decent at this track. He's got a 17.8 average finish. Never finished in the top 5, but does have two top 10 total out of the 14 starts, but one in the last 5 races. Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a potential of gaining 10 spots at 7,200. There's definitely some value there. Definitely willing to take some chances. I mean, his practice speeds were better than where he's starting, so he should kind of move up to the field. So I don't mind taking some ownership in Daniel at 7,200. It's worth the shot. It's worth the squeeze. Chase Briscoe at $7,100 starting in 10th. I mean, once again, Chase Briscoe qualified and showed up pretty well in practice last week and ended up having a miserable day. He's not getting the finishes that Noah Gragson is getting. Kind of running up there towards the beginning and then just has troubles and issues. So I'm going to fade off of Chase Briscoe, even though indications are, yeah, I mean, he's probably going to finish 22nd, 23rd. So starting in 10th, that doesn't work. So I'm not interested there. Josh Berry, also from SHR, starting in 17th, 13th in single lap, 15th in 10 lap consecutive average. I think actually Josh Berry has a win here in the Xfinity Series. I mean, I think Noah does too. Starting in 17th, I don't know if don't think he sniffs the top 10. I think it's going to be more if he finishes low 20s, maybe high teens, but that doesn't do much of any good. So, I mean, as much as I, am a fan of Josh Berry, I don't think this is a good spot to have Josh Berry. If he were starting in 27th, maybe take some shots, but starting too far up. Michael McDowell, once again, decent in practice, good in qualifying, but we look at the body of work here at Kansas, it's not good. 21.4 average finish. Finished 26th in this race last year. Only 2 top 20s in the last 5 races at Kansas and Vegas. And 23 total starts at Kansas and only 3 top 20s with a 29.9 average finish. Yep, starting too far up for me. I don't have any interest in that. Austin Cindric, same boat. 35th in single lap practice, 33rd in 10 lap consecutive average, 21.3 average finish. Starting in 7th, I think Austin Cindric will be lucky to sniff 15th, if not finish 20th. So I don't have any interest in him starting in 7th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting in 21st. This is intriguing because, like I've said, NASCAR is a momentum style sport, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. just signed a multi-year contract to stay in this number 47 car. So there's something to be said about just getting your mental headspace right when you're heading into these weekends. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has to be feeling pretty good about getting signed to a multi-year contract to stay in this car. Now, do I think he goes and gets a top 10? Potentially. I think it's going to be much more of like a 12th, 13th, 14th place finish for Ricky. But we look at his body of work, 19.4 average finish in the 5 races we're looking at, and out of the 23 total starts, 1 top 10, 13 top 20s. So I think we're kind of looking at a spot that's going to finish where he starts. But like I said, there is a little caveat of just got re-signed for a long-term deal. Austin Dillon, 6,500, who I thought may have found the lucky horseshoe, but has now lost that lucky horseshoe and is struggling finally again at $6,500. He's starting 16th when his practice speeds were 31st and 26th. He finished 33rd in the race here last year. 16th place average finish over the 5 races we're looking at. So that's the only bright spot, but the bright spot is you're starting at the same spot as your average finish. And your practice speeds were atrocious. So no real interest here in Austin Dillon either. Ryan Preece, 37th in single lap, 32nd in 10 lap consecutive average. Starting in 32nd, yeah, you've got potential for some place differential, but when your practice speeds are that slow and you've been struggling, I even starting in 32nd, I don't know if I like this play or not. I mean, we're getting to the point where we've got to start figuring out some of these guys down here in this lower range that I would be interested in. And I guess because you're starting in 32nd, I don't mind taking a couple of shots with Ryan Preece. But this style track just also does not fit Ryan Preece's what he's really good at. He's really good at flat, short tracks. So the Gateway would be interesting for Ryan Preece. Martinsville is good for Ryan Preece. New Hampshire is going to be a spot to look for Ryan Preece. So not necessarily Kansas. Carson Hocevar, 6,300, starting in 22nd. His practice speed was 14th in single lap, 18th in 10 lap consecutive average. He finished 20th in this race last fall. He went from 20th to 22nd last week, with kind of the same parameters, and that really was not enough to put him really in the top 15 in points. He needs to get up to 15th or 14th or 15th, kind of make it a good value play. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm not really sure what to do with Carson Hocevar because he always seems to finish where he starts. It just seems to be kind of clockwork. Is that enough? 6,300? Maybe. I don't mind having thrown a few darts at Carson and seeing if it sticks. You get a little bit of maybe some other guys that are falling out of the race because of whatever or having bad pit stops, and he gains a few spots. Maybe gets up to 14th, 15th. Then 7 spots of place differential makes it close at 6,300. I mean, once again, like I said, we've got to start trying to figure out who we're going to take down here in this bottom tier because we're going to have a very similar style optimal lineup as we saw last week at Dover. It's going to be 2 to 3 high-end guys and 2 to 3 low-end guys, with maybe somebody kind of in $7,000 middle range. And Jimmy Johnson, I think he still needs some more races in this car, and I just don't know if he's ever going to figure it out. I don't think it's there. And I think 19th is starting too far up when you're 38th in single lap, 34th at 10 lap consecutive average. I don't know if he finishes any better than 19th. He's kind of right there with Carson Hocevar. I don't know if there's enough juice to squeeze here for either one. Will I run a couple lineups with him in it? Sure, just in case something weird happens, but I'm not expecting a whole lot from a Jimmy Johnson pick. John Hunter Nemechek has won here in Xfinity. He's won here in trucks. He has an 18th place average finish, but not in the next gen car and not for Legacy. But he's starting in 29th. Practice speeds were a little bit better than that, not much. And I think we're probably on the high end looking at, I think an 18th place finish would be a good day for him. That's 11 spots a place differential at $6,000. I'll throw a few darts towards John Nemechek, probably about the same as I would for Jimmy Johnson. I think it's kind of like you build these lineups and you go, okay, I've got to run, I don't know, kind of like last week, you run a Denny Hamlin, a Martin Truex Jr., and a Kyle Larson, or one of those 3 types of combinations with that high end of a price. And then you get down here and you go, okay, and this lineup will run John Hunter Nemechek with those 3. The next one I'm going to run Jimmy Johnson with those 3, and then I'm going to run a Carson Hocevar with those 3. And then you kind of start to look and fill in the rest of it to see where you've got some money. So, yeah, I don't mind running John Hunter Nemechek. Starting in 29th, there is at least there's some buffer here. The worst he falls is 38th. And I don't think that's going to be the case for John Hunter. I think he keeps his nose clean. I think he just methodically works his way up to a 21st, 22nd place finish. And at $6,000, that might be enough. Corey Heim, the gentleman who won the truck race here a few hours ago, 5,900, starting in 20th. I think he kind of outkicked his coverage a little bit here on his starting spot. and he was 25th in single lap, 24th in 10 lap consecutive average. I'm not sure we get a much better than where you're starting type of a finish for Corey Heim. I mean, he's going to be feeling pretty good coming off the win from tonight, but this car and that truck are drastically different. So I think Corey Heim's going to need a few more races to kind of get accustomed to this. I don't think we get a much better finish than where he's starting. So, I mean, maybe throw 1 or 2 lineups together with him if you're going to run 10 or 20 lineups, but I wouldn't do any more than that. Austin Hill, 5,800. I mean, kind of starting in 34th. I mean, sure, throw some darts at it. Practice speeds were better than where he's starting, but he has struggled so far in most of the Cup races, even on super speedways when he's gone and run super speedways. He just always seems to have an issue or problem finishing out a race. And I think part of that may be a product of the length of the races. They're longer than what he has been used to running. So I don't mind throwing some darts here because he's starting in 34th. But also buyer beware. Could be a little bit of a false flag. Corey LaJoy starting 28th. He was 23rd in single lap, 19th in 10 lap consecutive average. At least his average finish is a 23.8, and he finished 22nd here in this fall race last year. I mean, I don't mind throwing some darts here either with Corey LaJoy. I think I'm going to just kind of spread the pot out with these guys back here. 1 or 2 of them, I mean, 1 or 2 of them are going to finish in the optimal lineup, and at least in the top 15. Corey LaJoy is pretty decent at 1.5-mile tracks, so I don't mind throwing some lineups together with Corey LaJoy in them. Zane Smith also had a really good truck race earlier tonight, so anytime you can get on the track, it helps. Just remember the correlation between a truck and these next-gen cars is drastically different. 5,600, starting in 24th. Scares me a little bit with Zane. I'm not sure we get a much better finish than 24th for Zane. I just kind of think Zane probably finishes right there with Jimmy Johnson and Arsen Osavar. And unless there's a lot of attrition up front, I'm not sure they get any. I don't think they get past being in the top 20. Daniel Hemrick last week had a really, really good pit strategy. He started in 14th, finished in 9th. And that was all pit strategy. But somebody was being smart on the pit box, which makes you go, okay, can you pull that off again? 28th in single lap practice, 31st in 10 lap consecutive average, starting in 33rd. I mean, like I said, you got to run some of these guys back here. And 33rd, there's a decent amount of place differential. Even if he only gets up to 23rd, that's 10 spots. And that's probably all you need at $5,500. And we saw last week, 3 guys, $5,600 or less, made the optimal lineup. So, Harrison Burton, $5,400, starting in 31st. Out of all the people that I'm not willing to throw darts at, it's probably going to be Harrison Burton. Starting in 31st, practice speeds were 26th and 36th in 10 lap consecutive average, 29.5 average finish for 4 starts. Finished 35th in the fall race here last year. Yeah, just no real interest in Harrison Burton. Riley Herbst starting in 37th. At least in the Xfinity Series, Riley Herbst is really good at 1.5 miles. And the problem is he is a little bit of a hothead. And he does not have much give and take to him. He's all take. And I mean, that sometimes plays well in the Cup Series until you ruffle a Kyle Busch up, and then the next thing you know is your day's done. And this car does not like to be overdriven. So starting in 37th, I mean, definitely throw some darts with it, but I don't expect Riley Herbst to be much better than probably 25th. Now, 25th to 37th, 12th place differential points. Sure. Well, I'll take some shots on Riley Herbst. I'm not saying don't take him. I'll take him over Harrison Burton. Todd Gillen starting 25th. I mean, all indications are he's going to finish where he starts, 24th in single lap, 22nd in 10 lap consecutive average. He's got an average finish of 24.3. He finished 25th in this race last year. All the indications are Todd Gilliland's going to finish 25th. Now, he has been running much better this year than he has in years past. Okay, so let's give him a little bit of a bump. He finishes in 21st. I mean, at 5,200, that might be enough. That's kind of what we saw last week. I don't mind throwing a couple darts here, but I think I would rather take Riley Herbst before I take Todd Gilliland. Or I'll take a Justin Haley. Starting in 35th, nowhere to go but up, really. Just follow Byron through the field. $5,100 starting in 35th. He was 29th in single lap, 28th in 10 lap consecutive average. Average of 26.4. Finished 21st in the fall. I mean, if he can get up to 22nd, 13 spots of place differential at 5,100, might be enough. Derek Kraus. Derek Kraus has run really smart, methodical races. He's not fast, not going to be fast. He's going to be very methodical. He's going to keep the car in one piece. He's going to probably end up 2 to maybe 3 laps down. If we see some attrition, when you're starting dead last, the next thing you know is you finish 28th. $5,000, 10 spots of place differential, puts you real close to where we need it. Don't mind taking some shots here. But once again, all these guys $7,000 and cheaper. It's so hard to figure out who to pair up with these top high-end guys. As we're going to end up with the same. My feeling is we're going to end up very similar to what we saw last week coming out of Dover. It's going to be a bunch of the high-end guys and a bunch of these really cheap guys to make those fit. Derek Kraus could easily be one of those that plays well. All right, so guys that I like, William Byron, on a place differential, but buyer beware. He's going to be extremely heavily owned, especially being as fast as he was in practice. Kyle Larson was solid, fast, and he's always is here at these mile and a halves. He's going to probably be decently owned. Not a whole lot of place differential, but really has a potential to be a dominator. Denny Hamlin, same thing. Best average place, average finish. Here at a 2.8 or something. 5 top 5s out of the last 5 races. Kind of the same thing, Martin Truex Jr. So Kyle, Denny, and Martin, just like we saw last week, all have the potential to finish 1, 2, 3 again. And William Byron getting up to 10th. Can't fit all 4 of those guys, but a combination of 3 of them with a combination of the cheaper guys down at the bottom, maybe. Guys with the best place differential other than a William Byron or Denny Hamlin or Martin Truex Jr., I like the Tyler Reddick play. I don't really love the Ryan Blaney play. It's there, but he does not really perform that well at Kansas. Bubba Wallace does. He's starting in 23rd. Brad K, I don't know what's going on with Brad K. Kind of has me a little bit concerned, but starting in 30th, definitely worth taking some shots. Alex Bowman, not a bad spot to be in either, other than a little concerned about what was going on at practice. Have not really seen or heard anything on why he didn't get a 10-lap run in. Cheap guys. Corey LaJoie is not a bad play. Don't mind taking some shots on John Hunter Nemechek or Riley Herbst. But other than that, I don't really like the Harrison Burton play. The Austin Hill scares me. Jimmy Johnson really scares me. Zane Smith, I think, is starting too far up. I don't mind the Justin Haley play starting in 35th. Do not like the Michael McDowell play. Do not like the Austin Dillon play. I don't mind. I'll have a couple of shots of Noah Gragson. That's kind of where I'm falling in on these guys. It'll be interesting to see if as we get more and more of these races in where we've got some good practice data and qualifying data, and then how they're falling in the race. That'll give us hopefully some better indications on really what to do with practice speeds, because the practice speeds have been a head scratcher for a while now. When the next gen car first came out, it was very easy to pick the guys that were super fast in practice, and those were going to be the guys that were fastest in the race, which was a good indication. Now we're starting to see where it's really who's got the 10 lap, 15 lap, 20 lap run speed compared to their original, compared to their qualifying, and putting all those together is kind of becoming the new puzzle piece, at least in my head and what I'm kind of building these lineups. So either way, I appreciate everyone tuning in this evening. Sorry I was a little late getting to the party. I usually try to do 10 o'clock, and same thing for next week. I have not looked at next week's schedule. Let's see. Schedule up for next week. View schedule. Let's take a look here. What we got here. We have Darlington. I want to see what the Xfinity race. How the Xfinity race is. Next race, Darlington. 1:30. Okay, so more than likely qualifying will happen before the Xfinity race at 1:30. So I'll be able to break down and really dig into a lot of the practice speeds. We'll find out Monday or Tuesday what the actual times are for everything. So yeah, we'll get a lot more information going into Darlington, and that one's going to be pretty critical. Tire fall off is for real there, and the fast guys are fast, and the slow guys are slow. But who's going to be the really contributing factor? Next week's going to be a lot of fun to really kind of break down the practice speeds and long run speeds for Darlington, because that track definitely has a lot of tire wear issues. But yeah, I plan on being live by about 10 o'clock. I'll have plenty of time to really dig into it and really try to get you some really good information. And once we finish this race tomorrow, I'll be able to dig into all that information. So either way, if anybody's got any thoughts or questions, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and leave me a note. We'll be more than happy to answer questions later. But either way, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week for the Darlington breakdown. And hope somebody takes home the bag. If you do, let me know. I appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend. And Paul, if you're still here, thanks for catching the no sound when I first started. So either way, have a great weekend. Good luck. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so got to be around the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checker. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby!
Hell yeah!
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position, we'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4, great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal, we got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away. Yeah, boys! Way to rebound! Great job!
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.